All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Looks like I'm on. Thank you for the thumbs up. Hello, hello. Sheila today, hello. Sandy Copeland. Hi. Very enthusiastic hi from Merritt C. Gardner. All right, good to see you all. Rachel Assance. All right. Hola. So I'm Anup Kumar and Namaste Sadie. We are talking today about accessing higher consciousness. Great question. What's higher consciousness? Right off the bat, someone asks. All right. So this is part of a 7-day total meditation challenge. And Deepak has released his new book, Total Meditation. So there is an app that you can download, the Chopra app, and the Total Meditation Challenge is available on this app. So please do download it, check it out, take the challenge, and see where your meditation practice is, or if you haven't started one, see how you can start one. And if you've already started one, you can see where you are and see what other techniques or practices may be useful for you. All right. Can you guys hear me? I see Christian Valdez says can't hear you. I want to make sure that you can hear me. So give me a yes, please, if you can hear me. Yes? Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up. Looks like it's okay. Emma, thank you. Okay, great. So, accessing higher consciousness. So this is one of those topics, like many topics about consciousness, that can go for hours, or it can be total silence. Right? So let's start with this. Let's start with saying that this higher consciousness and accessing higher consciousness is, yes, you are speaking very softly, someone says. Yeah, I guess I kind of speak softly. So maybe, here, I'll try to bring it a little closer. All right, so maybe that's a little better. So, accessing higher consciousness. This is actually a great example. What's happening now, right? So I'm adjusting the camera. Is the sound working? All these kinds of things are happening, right? So where is the higher consciousness? Right? Amidst all of these technicalities, so I have to put the title in and then pin the title and then going live. Is the connection working? Right? This is a good metaphor for everyday life. This is what happens in everyday life. Right? So where is the higher consciousness amidst these events? This is really the question. So when we talk about accessing higher consciousness, where is it amidst these events? And what is this higher consciousness? Right? So let's start here. In Vedanta, we talk about paravidya and aparavidya. Paravidya, the knowledge beyond, and aparavidya, which is not beyond. What is the knowledge beyond, and what is the knowledge that is not beyond? So very simple. The knowledge which is not beyond is the common knowledge that we have in society. Right? So my name is Anup. Your name is, I see Katie, I see Claire, or Rebecca, right? Each of us have our names as common knowledge. Right? I'm wearing a dark blue shirt, common knowledge. Right? We're using the internet, common knowledge. 1 plus 1 is 2, common knowledge. So what is it that all of these kinds of knowledge have in common? Right? So to recognize what we're going to talk about as higher consciousness, let's talk about what we talk about as daily, everyday consciousness. So what is it that all these kinds of knowledge have in common? The knowledge of the phone or the internet or our names. It is that all of this knowledge is seen from the perspective of the individual. Individualized, particulate knowledge is common knowledge, right? It's not useless knowledge. It's not knowledge that is to be avoided. It is simply common, everyday, what's called transactional knowledge. It is a knowledge that is required to transact, to interface in this world. All right, so this is everyday common knowledge, seen from the perspective of the individual. So if you look at the actual root of this, what is the actual root of this common, everyday, useful, interfacing knowledge? The root of it is our identity as a unique and separate individual. Right? It is the individuality. It is the experience of being an individual that superimposes itself on this field of experience, and we experience this world of individualized particulate knowledge. This is what we call everyday knowledge of the world. Okay? So then what's paravidya? What is that knowledge which is beyond? The knowledge which is beyond is that knowledge which awaits beyond the identity of individuality. Right? Identity is the name of the game. Identity is the name of the game. So what is this identity? And what is it? What kind of identity awaits beyond? Well, if you look closely, you will see that identity is very fickle. Right? So we may be sitting here now, and if you start daydreaming, you will see that you will take on a character in this daydream and be living in a separate world, in a separate daydreaming world. Right? The identity, which was localized in this body that you're occupying now, will shift to that body, that daydreaming body. Right? That character in the daydream. The identity will shift from here to there. Right? So it's fickle. When you have a dream at night, identity shifts. Right? There's no organ transplantation required. There's no difficult meditation practice required. Just like that, you have a dream, identity goes, boop, I'm done with this character, I'm going to the other character, and your identity shifts. In deep sleep, identity apparently disappears completely. As if we don't exist, it seems. Right? So in 24 hours, radical changes in our identity. From this character, daydreaming character, dreaming character, sleeping character. So identity is very fickle. The notion of what we are and who we think we are, we only look at it from one particular state, from this waking state, and it seems very solid and continuous. But if you consider the whole 24 hours, you'll see that who you are changes with the seasons, with every whim. Right? So this localized particular identity and reference point is the everyday interfacing level of consciousness. And just as we saw, just as identity can shift from one to another, it can also delocalize beyond any individual character. And this is what's referred to as the knowledge beyond. The knowledge beyond the individuality. that is accessible with a shift in identity, with a delocalization of identity. And this is your nature. This identity beyond the individual is your nature, is my nature, is the nature of things. And furthermore, it is accessible. It is accessible through your own introspective process. All right, so we're just delineating now what we mean by higher consciousness. Where is this higher consciousness? Do I have to climb the Himalayas? Do I have to go to a retreat somewhere? Right? Do I have to go to a religious place? No. The higher consciousness is right here, self-modifying as our individual personalities and individual fields of perception. Yeah? This consciousness which is here, self-modifies as our individual fields of perception and the individual characters. They come into relationship together, the field of perception and the character. Right? So what is beautiful about this is that higher consciousness is here, so we can all relax. It's here. So all the practices, all the mantras, all the meditations, all of this is for what purpose? What is the purpose behind this? How does it help? It does help. How does it help? It helps by removing the misconceptions and the distractions that are keeping our individual identity in place and therefore obscuring the vision of what is here. Right? So this vision, this recognition, is not something that one has to get from somewhere. It is not one that is possible to get from somewhere. Right? So everything I'm saying now, everything we're exchanging now is to begin this process of recognizing this is it. It is here. What we are all looking for is here. So relax into this recognition that what we are looking for is here. It is only that the misconceptions about what this is and the superimpositions of form and function and fluctuation and thought and emotion, all of these superimpositions usurp our attention. And therefore the attention goes into these particular avenues of thought and emotion and ideas and identities and needs and wants. Right? We're not making a judgment here as to what is good and not good. We're simply revealing the mechanics of what happens. Right? Some of the subtler planes of consciousness. It is not that only these subtler planes are to be occupied, because then our function at the level of interfacing as individuals changes. Right? It's affected because what we recognize changes. So we have to choose at which range of consciousness to interface, to inhabit, to dwell, to experience, to communicate. So relax into the awareness that this is here. This higher consciousness is here. This is the first step to accessing this. So this is what is meant by this thing, I am. Not I am Anup, I am a physician, I am a father, I am, whatever roles may be, right? The fundamental presence that self-modifies as all roles, I am. And this I am cannot be different for different individuals. So this is the higher consciousness beyond form and beyond function. Take a deep breath and relax a little more. This is not officially a meditation, but when we're talking about subtle topics, there's no difference between meditation and speaking, really. So right now, we are occupying a space together. You might be on the other side of the planet. I'm on the east coast of the United States. And yet, we're occupying a space. This is a space created in this subtler consciousness, in this higher consciousness. Worlds arise and subside. Physicality arises and subsides. Individuality arises and subsides. Right? Why is it that we can feel each other now? If this is entirely a physical space with solid walls, and you're on the other side of the planet and I'm on another side of the planet, why can we feel each other? Because this very physicality and individuality and separation is simply a modification of this deeper level of consciousness. That is how and why we connect. All right? That is where all intimacy and interconnection is born. We call it connection and interaction at this level of individuality, but it lives at the root in this deeper paravidya, the knowledge beyond. So sink into this consciousness. Allow the stories to fall away. Allow the boundaries of individuality to slowly start to blur. I think it was John Wheeler, a physicist, who said, the boundary of a boundary is zero. Like if you're going to create a boundary for this space and divide it in half, so there's a space. If you want to divide that in half, you put a boundary there, right? But the purpose of the boundary is simply to divide this space. The boundary itself has no independent reality. So that boundary, if that boundary is real, then we have to ask, well, what forms the boundary of that boundary? Right? If the boundary has no substance to it, then what is the boundary of it if it has substance? And there's no such thing. We superimpose boundaries. The boundary of a boundary is zero. The boundary around your body, which seems solid, when you look closely, you'll see cells coming and going, particles coming and going. There is no solid boundary. These are all superimpositions of perception. So accessing higher consciousness, number one, recognize it is here. Feel the fullness, the confidence, the groundedness that comes with recognizing this is here. This is not for some special person. This is for you and I. This is here. So that's number one. Number two, recognize that the only barrier to recognizing this higher consciousness is some kind of distraction. That's the only barrier. Distraction means there are 1,000 things competing for our attention. Right? There are 1,000 things competing for our attention. It can be what we have to do, what we're supposed to do, what we have to wear, how we have to look, how you have to smile, right? Cheese, every time there's a photograph, you got to say cheese. Right? The photograph is not supposed to be of who you are. It's supposed to be of who the photographer wants you to be. So there are 1,000 distractions. What we're supposed to do, right? Maybe hunger takes us in one direction. Maybe at an appointment, there's something to do. Maybe work, right? This isn't about good and bad. This is simply revealing the mechanics. There are many distractions, many other things that need to be taken care of, apparently. And because of that, the attention is habitually directed in the direction of particularities. This one thing, that one thing, these three things, these particularities. Our attention then gets drawn together and attended to one particular thing. Right? And when the attention is on one particular thing, then this underlying field of awareness is not recognized. This is the simplicity of what we call higher consciousness. So all the meditation practices and the techniques and the hearing about it, all of this is to slowly wean the mind from its dependencies on particulars. Right? So the practice of sitting in meditation and closing the eyes and watching the mind, for example, the purpose is to let go of the necessity to follow the mind wherever it goes. Because that mind is distracting, it's taking the attention. When that attention, which would be otherwise directed in particular ways, when that pools within itself and sits within itself, now you have a tremendous resource. It's like a laser that draws together beams of light into a single focus. And when that attention which is pooled is directed internally, then the inner light is perceived. Yeah? When the attention, which is usually habitually directed externally to particularities, when it is allowed to pool, and when it is then directed internally, then the source of light, what is called the light of lights, starts to become perceivable. And this is the journey to consciousness. The journey of consciousness to consciousness. Right? It's not one person going somewhere else. It is one's own nature, one's own self-modified consciousness redirecting its attention, giving up all the beliefs about how do I get there, I have to do this, I have to do that, letting all of it go, allowing the attention to pool. and allowing that fullness to then overflow. To soak in this fullness of attention, effortless attention. So all the effort is in releasing effort, paradoxically. Your nature is consciousness. Dr. Rasha says, so many distractions from the outside make us forget about what's inside, what's within us. Exactly. Exactly. So many of the apparent external distractions, right? So one has to be careful about what is useful, right? What is useful that we are doing? What is actually contributing to our quality of life of all the choices we're making in a day? What is really useful? Reflect at the end of the day. And then in the next day, choose only those things which are actually useful and contributing to your quality of life. And then what happens is, instead of 10 directions, its attention is going in only 5 directions, right? And then you have that extra resource now available that is pooling within you, that is not externalized. So with this steady practice, attention shifts from the external direction to pooling within oneself. This is the key shift in recognizing, accessing higher consciousness. Any questions? Let me know. Martha again, thank you. Adrian, thank you. Piero, how do I start All New to Me? Download the free app. It's a great way to start. On Chopra, you can download the Chopra app, and there's a total meditation challenge. So there are a series of meditations on there. You can choose the one that works for you. That's a great way to start. Sam Durella says, would you call this enlightenment? I would say it is an enlightening experience. I would not say enlightenment, because enlightenment, it almost sounds like something has happened and now there's a period, right? Like satisfaction, period. Or entrainment, period. Enlightenment, period. So rather than enlightenment, it is enlightening. In which way is it enlightening? It's enlightening in the sense that directly one recognizes the light of lights, that light which appears as internal and appears as external, the original light. This is recognized. There's also a lightness of being, which is a different kind of light, right? Where the world and the body and the mind seem to be buoyant. It's a lightness of being, like a fluffy cake, right? So that's another kind of light. And there's that light which casts onto situations. So now situations will be seen differently, understood differently. Behaviors, topics, fields will all be recognized in a new light, so to speak. So these are the 3 lights of enlightening experience. So all of these lights are recognized as identity shifts, as attention is pooled and used judiciously. Nana says, I want to go into automatic movement when I meditate. I'm not sure what automatic movement means here. If you can explain that further, I can comment. Is enlightenment free from emotions? Again, so I would not call this enlightenment. Many people use words in different ways, but it is enlightening in that we recognize the natures of light, right? Remember that emotions, thoughts, what we experience as objects, all of these occur in different ranges of the mind, in different ranges of consciousness self-modifying itself, right? So in some ranges, thought is not recognized. Emotion is not recognized. In some ranges, objects, perceptions are not recognized. In some ranges, different perceptions are recognized, right? So I would not say that there is something called enlightenment and that with this, there are no emotions. This is far too rigid. Rather, through this enlightening experience, meaning recognizing the nature of things, is a very simple way to put it. Through recognizing the deeper nature of one's identity and the nature of things, different ranges of consciousness are experienced, including emotion. Including emotion. It depends on the range of identity that one wishes to express through. When I meditate, my neck wants to move and stretch if I let it. Please do let it. All right, so in meditation, a range of experiences can happen. The body might want to kind of do this thing, right? You might want to raise your arms up. You may want to twist. Whatever feels natural, do it. Now, there are some kinds of meditation where it's sit still no matter what, right? That is a practice. It is a practice to prevent the mind from getting distracted. So understand the utility of the practice. Sometimes it's good to say, well, you know what? I'm not going to move. Right? But sometimes, especially as attention pools and it sifts through the body and rearranges mind and body, then you'll have to do some changes, especially along the spine, neck, head axis. So in that case, do allow it. My meditation has been leading me to tears and memories of past trauma. I'm not sure why. So meditation is a process of seeing oneself more clearly, right? And that includes seeing beyond the stories that we wish to not see. Right? So there is trauma. There can be things that have happened that we wish to not see or that we may not even remember, or they may even be from other lifetimes. But in the society generally, it is said, don't cry, don't show the stuff. There's no such thing as other lives. All of these kinds of stories keep these things suppressed. And so when a person starts to dive into the mind, these things will start to come up. So it's important to let them come up and not stuff them down and not say, well, I want enlightenment, so I'm going to jump over all this stuff. So journaling, talking to a friend, right? Find someone to talk to. Find some kind of movement. If you can release your emotions through movement, use all of these strategies to let whatever it is that was suppressed expunge itself, release itself. Is it okay to meditate in the down position like in bed? Sure. You can meditate in whatever position you want. Meditation is simply becoming aware of oneself. This is meditation. Now, you may fall asleep. You're probably more likely to fall asleep if you're laying down. And that's okay, so sleep and start again the next day. See, what happens is, if the mind is used to a certain level of stimulus, constant stimulus, then when the stimulus is lower, the floor drops out. And that's what we call sleep. Right? Constant stimulus, Now in meditation, it starts getting quiet, but it's hard to hold it here. It'll go low, 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 and then it'll just boom, the floor drops out and we'll fall asleep because we're used to so much stimulation. That's why in the morning, when the mind is here, people drink coffee, need more stimulation, right? But the greatest coffee and the greatest stimulation is one's own nature. It's the most powerful shot you can take. And you can't really overdose. You may not recognize people and things may look strange, but you can't really overdose. So recognize your own energy, your own deeper nature. And with time, as that mind settles, it will no longer require some external stimulation to keep it awake. Can we meditate with open eyes? Of course. Right? Meditation is not the time that we're sitting. It's not the time that the eyes are closed. There are no boundaries on meditation. There are only apparent boundaries when we start meditating. Right? Meditation is seeing one's nature more clearly, more deeply. Eyes open, closed, laying down, standing, sitting, talking. At some point, meditation is no longer an activity. Meditation is your nature. All right. So this will be living on IGTV, accessing higher consciousness. Download the Chopra app and join the Total Meditation Challenge. Thank you.